Hello and welcome to another episode of Fully Charged. Now, before we start on this episode, it's about a new car that's coming soon. I just want to clear something up that happened when I reviewed the Volkswagen ID.3. As you'll know, if you saw it, I was very impressed with it. What happened, though, was it really upset a lot of hardcore Tesla fans. Now, I said in the episode that if I'm really seriously considering getting this car when my Tesla Model 3 lease runs out. It really offended some Tesla fanboys. And I think they were all male. And they were really rude about the car. They said it was rubbish. They said I was an idiot for liking it. And how could I possibly consider any other vehicle other than the Model 3? The Model 3 is perfect, blah, blah, blah. And basically, this is the weird thing. I kind of agree with them because there's no question. I said it in the episode. Tesla are 3 to 5 years ahead of any other car manufacturer on the planet. And they're 10 years ahead of a hell of a lot more. They are an extraordinary, phenomenal organization that produces incredible technology. There are other cars that are nearly as good and a lot cheaper. And they will get much cheaper because the people, if there's one thing Volkswagen have under their belt, it's how to mass produce hundreds and hundreds of cars. But anyway, what we're talking about today is the Volkswagen ID.4, which is the ID.3's big brother, I suppose. So this is yet again, a compact SUV. It looks a bit like every other compact SUV that's come out that's electric in the last year. They are all so similar looking. I'm not that bothered about that. It runs on the same platform, the MEB platform. The facts we know at the moment, roughly 70 kilowatt hour battery, 320 mile range, WLTP. Well, we only use the EV database, and that is considerably less than 320 miles. 125 kilowatt charger, brilliant. So much faster charging. It's got a rear-mounted rear-wheel drive again, which I really loved in the ID.3. The ID.4's got the same thing, 204 horsepower rear-mounted motor. It can do 0 to 60 in 8.5 seconds. Oh, who cares? It's so ridiculous. And the predicted cost in the UK is £45,000, which is probably around 50,000 euros. And that's all we know at the moment. But we're lucky because it has been launched in America, and our very own Chelsea Sexton went along to see what the VW ID.4 is like. So Chelsea, thank you so much for joining us. The ID.4, so I just did a little rundown of the basics of it, just so that I've got that out of the way. So, roughly the battery size, the range, the 0 to 60 speed, vitally important. That is exactly
Absolutely.
The most important thing
God
about any car.
knows we have to race each other to the grocery store.
But so you went to the launch, and was that the press launch in Los Angeles
Yes.
which was a while ago?
Yeah, so they did. All the automakers are trying to figure out how to navigate in these times.
Yeah.
And so Volkswagen did 2 very local media events, one in Brooklyn, New York, and one in Los Angeles. And so they did a little bit of an unveil. So the cool thing was we got to see the car, walk around, but also Johan de Nysschen, who's the COO of Volkswagen of America, did the presentation. So I pestered him a little bit about what they're actually going to do.
We do not consider the legacy makers of EVs, the newly emergent makers of EVs. We do not consider the pioneers, Tesla, who have brought electrification to the auto industry and whom we admire and respect. We don't consider them as core competitors. Rather, we consider them as partners in enabling this transition from internal combustion to electrification. And our combined mission is to make the sales proposition for why compelling products such as the ID.4 present a very viable alternative in terms of the use case to an internal combustion engine vehicle. I think it's important to note here too that Volkswagen is still sort of at the early stage of its electrification drive, and so we have a lot of runway ahead of us.
But then you've since then had an actual drive of it, which I just love that because that's very Volkswagen. Because in Germany, you can drive the car, but no pictures, no cameras.
Yes, exactly. So it was a nice thing. About a week later, we got this sort of almost surreptitious little note. We're going to have one car at a local dealer. Come on down. You get a 45-minute drive, no cameras. And so I did, and went and pestered it a little bit. So
and that was uncut. That wasn't like all covered up inside. It was just a regular.
No, it was fully opened. It was, however, a pre-production model. So the interior is correct and all that. Not all the screens worked. A few of the features were a little bit still being dialed in.
Yeah.
So I think that was part of the no pictures thing. It was nice to drive. My impression was sort of, it's what I expected. But what's clear is that they are indeed, as they say, aiming for current gas car drivers, not aiming for competitive electric cars. Right. Although it's a nice enough electric car compared to the others. Yeah. There's definitely a little bit of like, we want to make this feel fairly familiar. Yeah. So the regen is not overly strong, although there's a couple settings. It still has creep. In fact, it has the strongest creep I have ever seen in a car, an electric car. Even sitting on a steep hill, it'll continue to walk you up that hill and over the top.
Oh, that's interesting. But it's just the term, isn't it? We have to get used to it, but the term, the strongest creep.
The largest part of that lower entry price comes from a smaller battery.
Okay.
So we are bringing in a smaller battery with all the implications inherent in that at a lower price point for those customers who are more price sensitive.
Got it.
But the core definition of the vehicle as it stands here, you may get changes in colors and trim and some technical updates, but this is 98% of what is going to come out of Chattanooga.
Got it.
There's no reason to wait.
I see.
In fact, if you wait, you run the risk of not qualifying for the federal tax rebates credit, so I wouldn't wait.
I would wish that upon you. If you sell 160,000 cars in a year, that'd be a great problem to have.
Well, it has to be, firstly, you need to consider that this volume is available for the entire group here.
Yeah.
So for the other brands as well.
Right. But I know what the other brands sell.
I don't anticipate us selling 160 or 150 or 100,000 of these next year. But the rebates won't be available indefinitely.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Is it not available yet then commercially? It's not actually for sale. You can't go and buy one today.
It is not.
Right.
So it is due here in the U.S. Around the second quarter of next year, depending on how many we get. Yeah. And they're supposed to have cars in dealers by the end of the year. And so we're actually promised a proper drive only a couple months away. Right. So there's lots of questions that didn't get answered this time, but it's also not our only shot.
Yeah. And they're not manufactured in the United States because
not yet.
Right. Oh, but is that the plan? Because Volkswagen obviously have factories there.
Yeah, so the plant, right now they're obviously all going to be manufactured in Germany. And that was a major question in my mind because to the credit of the compliance car battle, and Volkswagen has always been a compliance car in the US. The e-Golf is really sort of a California-only car, as nice as it was. This is meant to be a nationwide 600 dealer car. A big question in my mind is how many of those German cars we actually get. Production is supposed to start in 2022 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is where Volkswagen's big plant is. There will be a cheaper model with a smaller battery and a different battery supplier. They'll switch to SK Innovation for that model. Right. And I expect probably also the charging will change. This current one will have 11 kilowatt charging for level 2. Right. That's a speed that doesn't really exist in the US very much. So I expect they'll probably drop it down to 7 kilowatt, which is sort of the normal 240 volt charging here. And it has 125 kilowatt fast charging. Yeah, which is good. And a 3-year unlimited Electrify America contract. So you get free charging for 3 years in public at those high speeds with the purchase of this car. So it's a decent value. Yeah.
The aspect I really wanted to talk about is the Environmental Protection Agency, which I know now is a sort of emaciated skeleton of its former self, but it did exist. This is my take on it. For 10 years, the European vehicle testing regime tested diesel Volkswagens and went, yes, they are fine. They are clean. The diesel is clean. And it was the EPA and that story of how the EPA worked out that that
it was the Air
Volkswagen were
Resources
cheating.
Board, actually.
Air Resources Board.
First, yeah.
Yes, you're right.
It's always
Sorry.
California's fault. Everything is.
Everything.
No,
We should blame
it was
everything
a
on.
university in West Virginia, and then they worked with CARB. Yeah,
Right.
and so Dieselgate is still very much on the table here. And, on one hand, Volkswagen as a group, which owns Audi, Porsche, Bentley, Bugatti, a bunch of others, they've been planning to go increasingly electrified across the board. But especially in the US, Volkswagen brand was very much compliance cars only, and maybe a few plug-in hybrids, but really wanted to leave the EVs to Porsche and Audi because, in fairness, they're the most profitable arms of the company. Now, in the wake of Dieselgate, Volkswagen really has no choice for public perception and otherwise than to go increasingly electric, to do really high-volume electric cars, to start building EVs in their plant in Chattanooga. All of these things are kind of tied together. And so certainly that's one aspect of winning the public over that remains to be seen. The other aspect is that even outside of Dieselgate, some of these companies are really kind of late to the party.
Yeah.
So, on one hand, Audi has launched already the e-tron SUV here, which sure is a premium car, but it's a premium price class, but it's still a very, very similar car. And the heads of Volkswagen here used to run Audi. So Scott Keogh was president of Audi. Johan de Nysschen years ago was president of Audi, and then Infiniti, and then Cadillac, and back to Volkswagen, et cetera. So they have really no choice as a group not to knock this out of the park. After 10 years of watching everybody else and getting to learn from them, their leadership has gone through several other EV programs before. And whether or not that happens is an open question. Right now, it's all very of course we have it handled. Of course we'll take care of it. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah. But I mean, would you say, I think there are people that are interested in the automotive industry or cars in general would be aware of Dieselgate and aware that they cheated because they would still remember the news. There was a period of time when it was a big news story here. Most people have forgotten, I think, and don't and buy into the advert that tells them it's clean diesel, it's Euro 6, all that nonsense. But I've got the feeling it's much more in the public. There's far more members of the American public that still remember it and know there's piles of Volkswagens parked out in the desert that they've had to buy back. I mean, I think we don't know that in this country. Volkswagen had to buy back thousands of cars.
Scads of Volkswagens in parking lots these days. And it's true that sort of in some of middle America, it's less of a thing. Yeah. But amongst the people that are most likely to be considering an electric car or even thinking hybrid and might get pulled into an EV, they're going to be much more aware. And the other aspect we have to consider is how much EVs have always been a community-driven effort. It's drivers talking to each other and talking their friends and neighbors into it and stuff. And those people very much remember Dieselgate and have very specific feelings. It's very akin to GM and EV1. There's still lots of I will never buy a Volkswagen product because of Dieselgate. Just like they would never buy a GM product because of EV1. Yeah. And whether that abates as time passes is going to be largely up to Volkswagen and how they actually handle this.
Well, that was great to catch up with Chelsea, hear all that stuff about the EPA and the CARB, the California Air Resource Board, and the truth about Dieselgate. Please do the normal stuff that I say at the end, which is subscribe to Fully Charged, number 1, most important. Watch the shows, number 2, most important. If you really are feeling supportive and generous, have a look at the YouTube membership. Lots of stuff going on there. Have a look at the Patreon link that is beneath this video. Tell your family and friends about Fully Charged. We know that lots of people do that already, which is fantastic, which is why we get more people watching. Because what we're saying, I think, has relevance and importance in the current climate. And that's all. As always, if you have been, thank you for watching.